Finding your container may be the most tricky part about Video Background Pro, but it is without a doubt the most important. You will need to find a container if you are using the MetaBox or the shortcode. Both WP Bakery and SiteOrigin do not need a container element, as the video background is added to the row in the page builder you are using. Before we get started, it's important to know what a container is and what it does. Simply put, a container is nothing more than an HTML element selector on the web page. By specifying this HTML selector, Video Background Pro knows where you want the video background to be placed. Familiarizing yourself with basic HTML and selectors will give yourself a huge upper hand in finding your container quickly and consistently. I would recommend checking out the link in the documentation on CSS syntax and selectors before we begin. To get started, you'll want to go to the page in which you want the video background to appear. You will also want a browser that has good developer tools. I always recommend Google Chrome for this. Step 1 is to right-click on the region where you want to place the video background. For example, I want to place a video background in this gray section here. So I'll right-click and then click the Inspect tab in the pop-up menu. This will open up the developer tools. If your developer tools do not look like mine, you may want to click the 3 vertical dots in the top right corner of the window. Then, you want to select the dock to bottom option. This hierarchical list of elements is the HTML elements that make up your web page. If you hover over an element, you may see a variety of colors appear on the web page, like blue, green, and orange. Both blue and green mean that the element takes up that space. However, orange means that the space is empty. The idea is to find the element that takes up the entire portion of the area in which you want the video background to appear, where the colors are either blue and/or green. Since you clicked in the region prior to opening the developer tools, the current active HTML element that is selected in the view should be close to the correct element that is needed, if not the correct element. In this case, it is close, but the hero class does not fill the entire gray space. From here, it is best to move up the list until you find an element that takes up the entire space with blue and/or green. So it looks like we have found an element with an ID of masthead that fills the entire section with blue. This means that this is a perfect candidate for our container. As you can see, this element has an ID and a class attribute. In HTML, it is not required to have both. Sometimes you may see an element with only a class, and sometimes with only an ID. The distinction between the two is important, however. If we wanted to use the ID, we would have to prefix the container with a hashtag. This tells the browser that we are referencing an ID. Otherwise, if we wanted to use the class, we would have to prefix the container with a period. Let's head over to the edit page to see how this works. We'll demonstrate the ID first. Since the value was masthead, we'll enter the word masthead. But as I said before, we will need to prefix it with a hashtag. Alternatively, if we wanted to use the class, we could enter the value site header and prefix it with period. Now that we have a container, we can simply fill in the rest of the options to configure our video background. Let's update the page and see if our video background is now configured. Awesome. It looks like the container worked and we can see the MP4 video playing that we added to the MetaBox.